pleasure for me to come back to Wisconsin. I may have grown up in Oklahoma, but in many ways, in more ways than not, I think Wisconsin is actually home to me.
Anthony, arrived at the Daily Cardinal, fresh off the plane from Oklahoma, looking for a news story before he'd even found an apartment.
I was joking with some old friends of mine, and I said I think my favorite years in journalism happened at the Daily Cardinal when I was a student here at the University of Wisconsin. It was one of those moments where you really kind of just got to embrace what journalism was all about. There weren't a lot of rules. You kind of made the rules as you went along, but you learned how to do journalism, that day-to-day challenge of putting out a newspaper every morning. I look back on those days incredibly with a lot of nostalgia, with a lot of fondness, and I think in a more serious fashion, I kind of learned how to be a reporter in those days at the Daily Cardinal. That sense of being critical, of being a little bit skeptical about what you're hearing, of never taking things at face value. These are things that I think a lot of people don't learn. At the Cardinal made it possible for us to get that sense of things.
Everybody was judged according to their work, and you were most credible by doing good, honest journalism, and by Anthony stepping in right away and showing that he was a strong journalist, he gained a lot of credibility right away.
It was rigorous. It was a rigorous education. You went into class, you learned about things, not just the trade, not just the craft of what journalism is about, but the ethics behind it, the philosophy behind it, the history of it. And I felt like I came out as a well-rounded journalist in a lot of respects. The other great thing about Madison, though, was how many opportunities there were for a young journalist to actually write.
I credit Wisconsin with two things. One was critical thinking, and I think that's something the university has always taken pride in. It's something I certainly take pride in my education here, and I don't think anything has proven more important in my career since then. That ability to question what you're told, to be suspicious, to never accept things as they're portrayed. I learned that in the classroom. I learned it at the Cardinal, and I learned it with friends whom I spent way too many hours talking high politics and the very lowest gossip at the Black Bear Lounge.
I think journalism is one of those things where there aren't a lot of rules, where we kind of have to, there's an honor code in some ways, and I think this notion of ethics, this notion of creating some kind of, body of rules in which we can, not regulate the profession, I don't want to say necessarily, but at least, provide some kind of institutional grounding for what we do as journalists is incredibly important. So I think that sense of when academia and the professional side of journalism can intersect, can work together to create something, a little bit more ambitious. I think it's becoming ever more important. I think the other thing that I find, with younger journalists at least, is there's such a focus on being a journalist that maybe some of the younger journalists are losing perspective on the other things that make great stories, and that's history, that's language, a sense of the place, of travel, of experience. I think all these things, when they're rounded together, create better reportage, create better stories, create better journalism. And I think some people may have forsaken that for the ambition of just becoming a journalist first and foremost.
Anthony had a huge amount of empathy for the people that he worked with while he was reporting, and I'm talking about his interview subjects and the people that he spoke with while he was reporting. I sometimes say that Anthony is fearless in a sense, and I don't want to say that he wasn't scared or nervous about reporting in certain areas of the world, because I know he was, he told me firsthand, but he had a certain amount of determination for getting the story and for making sure the world knew about it. And that quality was unparalleled.
I can't stress that enough. Doing stories that no one else is doing, to me, is the cornerstone of memorable journalism.
Accuracy was a huge thing for Anthony, and making sure he got the whole story was very important to him, and I learned a lot from that lesson.
But I think the best journalism is sometimes about footnotes. When we write small, to say something big.
But I think some people forget that Anthony was just a regular man. He had a family, he had friends, and he had a life of his own outside of his reporting career.
The other thing I credit Wisconsin for, and I probably should say blame here, is the very worst addiction to the Green Bay Packers. I could easily have written another book if I channeled all the time I spend reading the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel website, the Green Bay Press-Gazette every morning. It's sick.
Anthony is wildly talented, he was a very, very busy man, but he still had the time to reach out to people who were just beginning, especially people at Madison. I know he loved his time at UW-Madison. He loved his time at the Daily Cardinal. And he said that he wanted to do everything he could to help those of us who were just starting out.
So much experience, and to get to share those experiences, to get to talk about those experiences, to try to see the next generation of journalists come up. I think that's always a real pleasure for me.